I don't do intros anymore.
The ones you did were so good, though.
I'm really good at it, but I just don't want to do it. I'm kind of like MJ on his baseball sabbatical right now. I know I'm really good at basketball, but I'd rather just not play it. Welcome to the Get Buckets podcast. After a long summer of Nathan serving the Lord at T-Bar-M summer camps, and me sitting around and hanging out with my 103-year-old great-grandma, we're back. Remember to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at GetBuckets_pod.
Question mark? Yeah.
I think.
It is.
I don't tweet from there nearly enough.
Yeah.
And our official sponsor, Pilot Pens, the official pen of the Get Buckets podcast, the official pen of champions, and the only pen I use.
It was a great intro. Sounded rehearsed at times, but it was good.
I really hadn't rehearsed it at all. It was the best part.
I know, that's awesome. How was your summer?
Summer was good. I played a lot of skip-bo. I won a lot of skip-bo.
Even better.
That's why Pilot signed me to this endorsement deal, the official pen of champions. And that's about all I did. How was T-Bar-M?
T-Bar-M was awesome. A lot of great people. Not so many great kids. Try to make them great kids. Not a lot of athletes.
Not that you would know what an athlete is.
No, not at all. But
lots of little Nathans running around out there.
a lot of kids that have maxed out their potential by the 5th grade. Yeah, there's a lot of those. Definitely. There was a lot of little Kyle Crawfords too. So
they get a lot of buckets, huh?
There's a lot of 4th grade kids that could get buckets. None from as far back as you.
They probably thought they were really funny with all their jokes too, huh?
Yeah. Yes, they did. For those who don't know, we do have an intern. We have a few interns. One of them is here currently on Harvey Nation Stats and Info right now. He's statting it up, Mr. Joey Butita, otherwise known as Darren. So,
otherwise known as Joey Buckets.
Joey Buckets, Darren, whatever you want to call him. He's working stats today, so we were going to try to get those stats quickly and efficiently to you, the listener, and make this under 2 hours. So with that said, let's go to college football, which opened this last weekend. Kyle, I will start with you. Who was your most impressive team from the weekend?
Well, you're really throwing me off here because we're not following the outline that you set up perfectly. Because really, we should be starting with you. But I'll pick Baylor as my most impressive team of the weekend. They really came out and surprised me. They started playing more like Baylor in the fourth quarter, but then they did something completely unlike them and made a field goal in a clutch situation to take the lead with about a minute left. The offense looked really, really good. The defense looked better than it has in the past. Not great, but it was really hard to get a feel for the defense because the special teams were so bad that TCU had great field position all night.
Yeah, there was one point in the second quarter where all of TCU's scoring drives had started in Baylor territory. I mean, you might as well just kick it out of bounds if you're going to be that bad. It was,
or try an onside kick. I mean, at least at that point you have a chance to get the ball.
Yeah, they were getting that far anyway, so not a bad idea. But we're going to talk about this more later, which I guess I'll go into my team now because we're going to get to Baylor again in a minute. My most impressive team was Boise State. Baylor was very impressive. But Boise State went on the road, as they always do, and played Georgia in the Georgia Dome and really just wrecked them. It wasn't really close ever, in my opinion, and a lot of people had Georgia beating Boise State, but now Boise State really has a clear shot toward a national title run if they go undefeated. Maybe. We'll see what happens, but I don't see anyone beating them, although they are in a tougher conference. Now in the Mountain West, they'll have to play TCU, so that could be a potentially exciting game if TCU gets a little better on defense, which they're notoriously better at. That didn't make a lot of sense. So
Yeah, Boise State looked very good. Kellen Moore looked like himself, even though he lost some receivers. They were clicking offensively very well. Defensively, they looked good. And I don't know how they continue to do it because I don't think anyone would argue that Georgia was the more athletic team, the bigger team. And Boise State simply dominated that game really on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, and not only did it's not like everyone really associates Boise State with being kind of new in trick plays and having to like out scheme you. They ran it down Georgia's throat. I mean, it wasn't anything complex. They just ran it right down the middle, and Georgia couldn't stop it. There's always going to be the Boise State haters, and any game Boise State loses is their chance to pounce and be just be like, man, I told you Boise wasn't any good. When all they do is go on the road just about every season and win a big game. Now, whether Georgia ends up being good or bad, they can't control. But at the time, it was a big game. Like last year when they beat Virginia Tech on the road, and Virginia Tech ended up flopping to a FCS school the next week. I mean, they can't control that. They're scheduling hard games at the beginning of the season to prove that they can contend with anybody. And I think, or I hope that they're given a shot to at least play for a national title if they're undefeated, just so we can see them in that stage, because we've seen them on the second tier stage with the BCS Bowls and the Fiesta Bowls and things like that, but we've never seen them on that national championship stage, and I think that'd be exciting to see because I think that they're worthy of that as a program.
I would agree with you, and I would like to see them go undefeated at least into that TCU game. And I guess we're assuming that TCU is going to be more back to the TCU of old, and that their loss to Baylor was more Baylor being good than it was TCU being down. But that could be a really exciting game, and that would be a game I would actually find myself rooting for TCU in because it would make Baylor look better.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's talk about the TCU Baylor game, which you attended. How was the atmosphere at Floyd Casey?
The atmosphere was really good. It was just about as crowded as you'll ever see Floyd Casey. And some of that credit definitely has to go to the TCU fans. But I would say it was 25 to 30% purple, and everybody else was out there for Baylor wearing gold. And it was a really good atmosphere. It was about as loud as you're ever going to hear, as you've ever heard Floyd Casey. Hopefully it will get louder than that later into this season.
Yeah, from the TV side, it sounded and looked really good. I was impressed because I had never been there for anything that impressive. And then you had stud quarterback Robert Griffin III just went nuts in the first half and partially into the third quarter. That was absolutely insane. He finished with 359 yards passing, 5 touchdowns, at one point completed 15 passes in a row. He was insane. Talk about that a little bit.
I mean, he made one mistake the entire night, and that was in the fourth quarter. He scrambled and he got hit and really wasn't protecting the ball well, and it led to TCU's go-ahead field goal in the end. But looking back, other than that, there's nothing that Robert Griffin did wrong. He called all the right shots from the line when he was changing something. He went out and caught a pass on what turned out to be the most key play of the game, a 3rd and 10. He went out and caught a pass from Kendall Wright for about 15 yards. His deep ball was very, very much improved from last year. I think he threw I think all 5 of those touchdowns were probably in the range of more than 10-yard touchdowns. And one of them was on a play-action fake, which he sold brilliantly. And then the deep balls, the 30-plus yard passes that he ended up throwing, one of them was left a little bit short and could have been picked off. But other than that, every ball he threw was right on the money.
Yeah, it was impressive to watch. These balls were on ropes. They were perfectly placed. And then you mentioned it, where that 3rd and 10, where the whole fourth quarter, the Baylor offense had done nothing. And some genius decides to run the quarterback down the middle of the field and throw to him, which should be against every law ever. And he makes the biggest catch of the game while getting drilled, and then ends up leading the team down for the game-winning field goal. I mean, it was exactly, if you're a Baylor fan, it's exactly what you've wanted to see for so long, and what you, I guess, haven't seen. You've seen the collapses, which you saw, but you haven't seen the get back up and fight back and pull it out, which had to be nice.
And coming off of the play where he made that catch to get Baylor a first down, he actually had the wind knocked out of him, and he wasn't the one calling the plays that Coach Briles relayed in at the line of scrimmage. He said in the post-game interview that he was pointing and making it look like he was the one yelling, calling the plays, but really Terrence Ganaway was back there calling all the shots at that time.
It's the kind of insight that we need from you. Good work. Good sideline reporting.
And on the subject of Terrence Ganaway while we're there, he really was a huge key in Baylor's success. He came out early, ran the ball really well, wasn't afraid to run into contact, and that really opened up for the receivers to get a little bit more man coverage.
Yeah, Ganaway, 24 carries for 120 yards and a score. Really, really big day for Ganaway, which I didn't see coming. And then they just started gashing the TCU defense, which I understand is probably down based on what they lost, but still they have the pieces that are arguably better than Baylor's from the past.
Right. And, I mean, they have a historically good defense, not based on the players that came in necessarily, but based on the way that the coaches coached those guys up. So I think the coaching staff for TCU deserves a little more of the blame than Gary Patterson might be wanting to accept.
How about Kendall Wright?
He did everything.
Seriously, 12 receptions, 189 yards, and 2 scores.
And he threw
one.
two passes. He threw a touchdown, and he threw the first down completion to Griffin. He did everything you could ask for out of him.
Yeah, that was big. Okay, so now the question is, how good will Baylor be this season? Which you don't want to look too much into one game, but it has to be a positive sign based on what we all thought. I mean, the season was going to be. This is a step in the right direction. What are you saying now?
That's a really tough question to answer because TCU lost a lot of players, but still TCU came in ranked 14th in the nation, and Baylor beat them. And so there's one thing you know for sure, and that's Baylor can score on just about anybody. The only other defense I really see even challenging Baylor would probably be A&M's. And the offensive line for Baylor was excellent, so buying Griffin time shouldn't be a problem. So I could see Baylor getting to 8-9 wins, but I could also see him stopping short at maybe a 6 or 7.
You got to be looking at the A&M matchup, and I know everybody takes the one game at a time motto, but SFA, Rice, Iowa State, Kansas State, then you're going versus A&M possibly 5-0, which they would likely be undefeated as well, and that'd be the primetime Baylor A&M matchup that everyone wants to see as a Baylor Bear, and I guess even A&M, probably not to a lesser extent, but that's the matchup that everyone wants to see. I mean, do you think that will happen? As
every Baylor fan that has been rooting for this team for more than 2 or 3 years will tell you, you truly have to take it one game at a time with this with any Baylor team, really, because they have a history of building you up and then tearing you down. I think it can definitely happen. I think Baylor is better than their next 4 opponents, but then there's the case of they actually have to show up and play those games. They can't win them on paper.
Well said. Well said. All right, let's move on to a tragedy where the Ducks got hurt by a decently good LSU team. And since I know you don't care about this game, I'll talk about it. Ducks were not ready, I'll tell you that. Just mental mistakes and 4 turnovers just killed the team. Kenyon Barner fielded 2 punts inside the 10, one of which he lost and gave away to the other team for a touchdown. And then stud playmaker freshman D'Anthony Thomas fumbled on 2 consecutive plays after, and the only reason he was back there is because people are hurt or cramping. It was just really a nightmare start to the season, and it was better than, it reminded me a lot of the Boise State opener from 2 years ago where LeGarrette Blount infamously punched a white guy after the game. And it reminded me a lot of that because that game was frustrating and nothing went right. This game, some things went right, but everyone's going to say that Chip Kelly is not a great coach in the big games that people have time to prepare for him. I mean, he can't control who's fumbling the ball. I mean, I thought he coached fine. And when you give LSU, kind of like Baylor gave TCU, when you give LSU short fields the entire game, they're bound to punch some of them in, even with Jarrett Lee. So a big setback for the Ducks in our national title hopes. So we're shooting for the Rose Bowl.
And you look a little more in depth at the game, and you see how badly the turnovers actually hurt Oregon. As you said, they had 4 of them, and LSU didn't exactly light it up offensively. 10 for 22 passing on the night for Lee wasn't anything. I mean, they had close to 200 yards rushing, maybe a little over it. I don't have my stats guy with me, so maybe yours can check that.
Yeah, 175 rushing for the Tigers.
And I mean, so they had, I guess, less than 300 yards of total offense.
Yeah, I mean, and Darren Thomas he did not look like the same Darren Thomas that was supposed to have played in a national championship game and was ready. He was wildly inaccurate with his 54 passing attempts and only 31 of them being completed. But it can only go up from here, and just a poor way to start the season.
I'll throw one more note out on just the subject of this game before we talk about LSU and their SEC title hopes. I don't know what LSU defender it was, but he noted that LaMichael James was not the same guy that they had seen on tape, that he looked hesitant, he looked slow, he looked like he was second-guessing himself. So LSU noticed something different out of him, and that obviously is a major reason why that Oregon offense seemed to kind of stall.
Yeah, not good. Okay, what do you think about LSU moving, I guess, into the SEC? They're in the SEC West. They're in that tough division with Bama, with Arkansas, with Auburn, who's not very good anymore. But what do you think about their chances?
Well, they're going to have to go through Mississippi State. They're going to have to go – they play Florida this year. They're going to have to play Auburn, Alabama, and Arkansas. I'm not sure that they're a team that can win all those games. They didn't really play very well offensively, and I just don't – I guess the SEC is kind of more wide open this year than it has been in the past, but I think it's going to end up being Alabama's SEC.
I would agree with that. But on this podcast, I've notoriously hated LSU. I feel like most of their wins are luck. They luck into a lot of stuff, as they did last year. Their defense is incredible, but at some point you have to have offense, and it doesn't have to be Alabama good, but you're going to have more offense than they have. They don't have much, and they really rely on their defense forcing turnovers and giving them the ball so they can run it pretty much the entire game. So I don't think this is any more than like an 8-4 team. I think they'll lose 3 or 4 times.
I could see it even 8-4. I would say is a conservative prediction for them. I would guess 9-3, maybe 10-2. But I mean, I guess it would be a couple of lucky wins falling here and there for them.
Kyle, let's talk about realignment of what's going to happen there, since this affects Baylor in a way that it does not affect Sam Houston State. You can discuss that a little bit.
Well, I'll try to keep it brief. Within the next 24 hours, A&M is expected to know whether or not they will be getting an invitation to the SEC. And from every account that you will hear, they will be getting that invitation and they will be joining the SEC. You would assume the SEC would look for a 14th team at that point. Not quite sure who it would be, but many people are speculating that when this shift happens, that Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, and potentially Texas and Texas Tech are going to head out west and become part of the Pac-12, making it the Pac-16. And when that happens, even more people are suggesting that it's just going to kind of create conference Armageddon, and people are going to try to pick up the leftover pieces of the Big 12. Missouri is kind of in talks with a few different leagues, whether that be the SEC or the Big East. And then Kansas and Kansas State have been contacted the Big East. And that kind of leaves Baylor and Iowa State out to dry for right now. As a Baylor student, I would love to see Baylor somehow sneak into a BCS conference, especially with the way all the athletics at Baylor are playing out right now. The football team's on the rise. The basketball team's on the rise. Women's basketball is consistently good. Overall, we have what is turning into a good athletic department. And Baylor's best hope for that would probably be the Big East. The Pac-12 right now is doing a kind of Noah's Ark system where they get their teams in twos. Oklahoma would come with Oklahoma State. Texas would come with Texas Tech. And so maybe the Big East sees that and thinks that's a good idea. So maybe Baylor could sneak in since the Big East now has TCU with them. And that's honestly the Bears' best hope to remain in a BCS conference if the Big 12 does implode.
As a Baylor student / fan, what do you think if they can't go Big East? What's your favorite backup plan?
If they can't get into, I guess, a BCS conference, if the Big East is their best hope there, Conference USA or the Mountain West Conference would really be the two next options on the list, which sounds bad, and it probably will be bad, but you can look at it from the optimistic view of if Baylor somehow manages to retain their coaches, Kim Mulkey will most likely be gone, but quite frankly, I don't care. If they can retain Art Browse and if they can retain Scott Drew, both of those programs can continue to build and be competitive. You've seen mid-majors in basketball, whether it be Memphis, whether it be Butler, whether it be Gonzaga. You've seen them have continued success, and Baylor would really have a foot up on those teams, especially in basketball, because they would be going into this conference with a bunch of All-Americans, McDonald's All-Americans, and highly rated high school players already on their team. So you could see them finishing first year after year in basketball and kind of creating a bigger national brand for themselves by being the underdog that just won't go away. And football-wise, you see who thrived in Conference USA, or you see a Boise State. And I guess that's what Baylor would have to shoot for in that case, is a team that just dominates all of the smaller schools for long enough that they can schedule the Georgias, they can schedule the Virginia Techs to play early in the season in hopes of continued improvement and maybe sneaking into a BCS bowl one day.
All right, let's pick some games, which went really well for me last year. Started out slow, continued slow.
Finished slow.
Finished pretty slow. And ended up losing by a mere handful of games to you. But this year will be different. I'm on the rise. I feel like I have a lot of momentum coming from college basketball season. I have a lot of momentum.
You had a good college basketball season.
Yeah, we're trying to bridge that and carry it, bring all our success over. So we'll start with Arizona going to Oklahoma State on Thursday, I believe.
It is on Thursday.
Where are you going there?
I'm going to take Oklahoma State. I think their offense is explosive. It didn't have the best week last week. I think Whedon threw 3 interceptions, but they're going to get back on track. Hopefully they won't wear those gray jerseys that really show the sweat off again. wasn't a huge fan, but I think Oklahoma State will win this game. I think they're a very good team.
I'll agree with you here. If this was in Arizona, then I may go with the Wildcats, but I will take the Cowboys at home with that offense, and I don't really need to back that up anymore. Okay. Missouri Tigers traveling to Arizona State without the likes of Will Ebner, who is hurt. Shocking, I know. Who do you have?
I'm going to take Arizona State here. I think them playing at home, they've got some sweet new helmets going on over there in Arizona State. Even if it does look something like a gang sign, some police are saying. I really think Arizona State will win this game simply because Missouri didn't impress me in the first week. They didn't exactly have a great showing against Miami of Ohio, who's a powerhouse football program. They just didn't really show up, and I would like to see them show up, and I would like to see Missouri win that game because it will look good upon the Big 12. But I think Arizona State's going to beat them.
I'll take Mizzou. Although unimpressive in their opening game, they'll have stuff figured out, hopefully. And like you said, Arizona State's uniforms are cool. They're new, and I will watch that game with anticipation of what they will wear. But I cannot go against the Tigers in a ranked game where 20 is playing 21, or whatever the rank is. I will go with the Tigers, and I will die with the Tigers. So, moving on. South Carolina going to Georgia. Georgia having another home game, this time in their real stadium. I will take... I still haven't put anything yet, but I will take South Carolina as Kyle throws his pilot pen, the official sponsor of the Give Buckets podcast. I will go with the South Carolina Gamecocks. Steve Spurrier may not know what he's doing with his quarterbacks, but I don't think they'll need it. Go Gamecocks.
I'm going with South Carolina too. I really am only picking them because if I pick Georgia and South Carolina wins, it's a double whammy because I really hate South Carolina. I don't like Steve Spurrier. I root for Clemson, South Carolina rivals, and I'm just trying to avoid this whole double whammy thing. So I'm picking South Carolina, but go Georgia.
Confusing, but moving on. Notre Dame, a rather unimpressive showing at home against South Florida on Saturday, is going to the Big House to play Michigan, which is apparently a really hot ticket. I think I see cheapest seats at like $540. So have fun getting into that one if you want to drive to Michigan. Or if you live in Michigan, good luck.
We're really trying to expand the podcast outreach. So if you're living in Michigan, let us know, and we will give you a mention on the next podcast.
Yeah, definitely. If you live anywhere outside of Waco, really, just holler at us, and we'll make sure to include you somehow. Who are you going with in this one?
I'm gonna go with Michigan. It's the first night game at the Big House. Everyone's going to be excited, not just Michigan. Notre Dame will be excited to be there. But Notre Dame, they're just Notre Dame. Notre Dame hasn't been good, memorably good, since I can remember. And I think that Notre Dame is on track to become completely irrelevant at some point in the near future because how long can we keep giving a team that doesn't succeed chances? So give me Michigan.
Give me the Fighting Irish, who will fight the Michigan Wolverines and hopefully overcome the loss to South Florida. Hey, Tommy Rees is starting, okay? Weirder things have happened. All right, final game. Alabama going to Penn State. Not gonna lie, I did not see Penn State play, nor did I see the score of their Week 1 game. But I saw Alabama, and that's enough for me. I will take Alabama without even thinking about it.
What happened to you disagreeing with me on some of these?
I disagreed on 2 of them.
You said we were going to at least disagree on 3 before the podcast started. I'm also taking Alabama just because the SEC seemed to dominate the Big 10 leaders and legends, and Alabama's going to win. I would guess by at least 21 points.
Kyle comes up with a 21-point spread. Alabama is only favored by 10. How does that change your vote? Shouldn't. Go with Bama. Yeah, but you mentioned that we had 3 different. I changed my Georgia pick once I thought about it more. I didn't like it, so went with South Carolina. Sorry if that throws a kink in your plan.
The NFL starts this week.
Cool.
Key storylines, just real quick. The Texans have a wide open division. Peyton Manning is going to miss this week 1. And, yeah, I mean, it's the Texans' division to lose at this point, I would say. They can really get off to a head start by beating the Colts in week 1.
Awesome. And NBA news, there will be a Las Vegas league full of NBA players. So if you happen to catch yourself in Vegas this fall, be sure to attend a game.
Also, be sure to invite us. We would like to go to Vegas.
I would also like to go to Vegas for multiple reasons. One, to attend some of those games, because I hear those exhibition games are exciting.
As do I.
If anyone's in Baltimore, be sure to send me a plane ticket so I can come to one of those. I don't have any friends.
If anyone's in Waco, come by my house. Say hey.
Yeah, and when I make it up there, be sure to come by and say hey when I'm there too. So.
He kind of smells bad.
Who, Joey?
You.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never actually met Joey, so I don't know if he smells bad or not.
Darren, do you have anything to say about that? He's working on stats. He's doing a good job. He's working on stats for next week already.
That's a good Darren back there.
Predictive stats. We're working on an algorithm that comes up with success and games to pick. So, trying to make me better.
Hopefully it's not the one you used last year.
No, it's a reworked formula this year.
Good.
It's kind of like...
So is it the exact same formula? You just pick the opposite of what you would pick?
It's a reworked formula. It's the same. It uses the same teams.
You just multiply it by its inverse?
It uses the same teams. It comes up with a different outcome. So it's reworked from the ground up. Darren really worked on that. So yeah, be sure to like the podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter. And
follow
be sure
me on Twitter, too.
Follow Kyle on Twitter.
Because I don't tweet from the Get Buckets podcast one anymore.
It's really...
I do need to. I tweet a lot about sports from my own, so... At GBK Craw.
At GBK Craw. At Harvey Nation.
At Harvey Nation Sucks.
Okay. Thank you for that. And until next week...
I'll leave you on a happy note, Get Buckets fans. Earlier this summer, a report surfaced that the Lakers had given part of their playoff bonus checks back to some of the staff that are going to get laid off during this lockout, and that includes everyone from Kobe Bryant all the way down the line gave up part of their playoff bonuses. And Luke Walton also took money out of his own paychecks and gave it to the training staff of the LA Lakers. So there is the rich giving to the less rich. And that was a great deed by the Lakers, and I've got a little more love for them because of that.
Shout out to Luke Walton.
He gets buckets.
And so should you.
Giddy up.